Ata for the sound of the bell. Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolence. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoka Vairocana Mahamudra Javataya Pravataya Please stand and join me in the chanting of the three refuges in Sino-Korean. Shishim Kwemyone Shibam Samse Chemon Chale Sanchu Il Che Shishim Kwemyone Shibam Samse Chemon Chale Sanchu Il Che Da Maya Shishim Kwemyone Shibam Samse Chemon Chale Sanchu Il Che for refuge to the Buddha
I go for refuge to the Buddha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
and realize the great way.
and realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma
I go for refuge to the Dharma
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings
I will penetrate the teachings
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please return now for a shorter period of meditation. And following that, we will hear a Dharma talk offered by our teacher in Colorado Springs, Kusa Ivan Meyerhofer. And just follow along as we do some mindful stretching. Perhaps we could have the camera a little bit closer for our Dhammapada reading. Continuing to read from the chapter on impurity. Dwelling on your brother's or sister's faults multiplies your own. You are far from the end of your journey. The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. See how you love whatever keeps you from your journey. But the Tathagatas, they who have gone beyond, have conquered the world, they are free. The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart. All things arise and pass away, but the awakened awake forever. So good morning, dear Dharma friends. The Dhammapada reading, the way is in the sky, not in the sky, it is in the heart, I think is a good introduction to Akusa's Dharma talk today, which is on how we work with precepts as a heartfelt practice. So we'll go now to Colorado Springs for this offering by our teacher, Akusa Ivan Meyerhofer.
Thank you, Ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me okay over there? Sweet. So, welcome everybody. Just take a few seconds to settle in to make sure the technology is all up and running, as I believe it is. Just settle into your space as we begin this Dharma talk on the precepts. Not as formal, but slightly informal. On your couch, on the floor, maybe with a window open, just taking notice of what's outside at the moment. If you have a window nearby, the light is shining through. An hour later, some of us may be tired. Some of us may be wide awake. Just settling into our bodies and minds. Just for a few moments. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to be. All right, welcome in. Thank you so much, Ma'um and Haju and the Ann Arbor Sangha for inviting me to give the Dharma talk today. I'm very excited to be here and also nervous, as is normally the case. But happy to be here this morning to talk about precepts. I was talking with Haju the other day, and I know we're starting the precept process and the Ann Arbor Temple and across the society. And every year, I don't think this is giving anything away. Most of us are familiar with some part of this process. But every year at the precept taking ceremony, they invite somebody from the previous family, if I'm not mistaken, or from a previous family, to come and just give a talk about their relationship with the precepts. And this is something that I really value. I love hearing the stories and just love hearing the development. You never know what you're going to hear or what to expect, but it's just a great way of hearing somebody who's gone through the process come back and talk a little bit about the precepts. And I've never done that for myself, to myself, or written down, like, what is my relationship with the precepts? And what do I think about them now? It's more than 10 years since I've taken them, and then a little bit less, but some years since I've taken Bodhisattva precepts as a Dharma teacher. And so I really appreciate just taking the time to reflect and come back. Where am I now? What is this now? What is this path now? I've also been involved with the working group that's working on ethics curriculum for our training students, and also kind of an ethics curriculum grounded in Buddhist ethics and beyond. Working with our training students, but also with our teachers as a kind of ongoing training. Some of these proposals will come out soon, but the conversations we've been having in the group have been very rich, talking about how we work as ethics within our training programs and with precepts, and how we can really build that and see places where we haven't been as mindful, that we shine a new light in terms of how we can really build out these practices. And so deep bows to the group that I'm working with there. Some of the quotes, actually, and then also in this last week, just the kind of talking about precepts, getting ready for this talk, there have been some emails going around with quotes. And so I'm going to start this talk with just 2 quotes. And this come from Mosam Sam. So thank you very much, Mosam Sam, for bringing these quotes in my direction. And I'm going to just let this kind of bookend the talk at the beginning and the end. So the first one is from a book called Waking Up to What You Do, a Zen Practice for Meeting Every Situation with Intelligence and Compassion by Diane Rossetto. And this quote is attributed to the Dalai Lama. There's only one important point you must keep in your mind, and let it be your guide. No matter what people call you, you are just who you are. Keep to this truth. You must ask yourself, how is it you want to live your life? We live and we die. This is the truth that we can only face alone. No one can help us, not even the Buddha. So consider carefully, what prevents you from living the way you want to live your life? And then second quote, again from Osam Sam, sending it my way. Thank you very much. A quote from Thich Nhat Hanh's For a Future to Be Possible. This quote is attributed to Richard Baker, Roshi. Instead of saying only, how do we keep the precepts? We can also ask, what state of mind keeps the precepts? When the precepts are present as thoroughly held intentions, they generate precept-keeping states of mind. So with those two quotes in mind, I want to reflect on two areas of precepts that have been very much alive for me, I think, in the last many years in various ways. And one is precepts as community, and precepts in relationship with community as a living tradition, as a living thing, dynamic relationship with community. And then two, this idea of the precept keeping state of mind, which for me is about precepts and repentance and responsibility. And so first on community. And I kind of want to talk about this in various ways, and it would be inappropriate to go through a whole conversation on the precepts without actually talking or giving the precepts. I believe it's possible that in a Dharma talk recently, you went over some of the precepts, or Mo might have recited them, but can never recite them enough. So as we go into this topic of community, I'm going to start with the 5 basic precepts. And maybe for these, if you don't have to sit formally, but just put yourself in a position where you're very attentive to what the precepts are saying. I'm going to go through the first 5, and then we're going to start varying the precepts after that. And after each one, I'll ring a bell. So just bringing your whole attention to your mind, your body, your awareness in this moment, ready to receive the sounds as they come through these interwebs that connect us. 5 basic precepts. I resolve to abstain from doing harm, but to cherish all life. I resolve to abstain from taking what is not given, but to respect the things of others. I resolve to abstain from engaging in sexual misconduct, but to practice purity of mind and self-restraint. I resolve to abstain from lying, but to speak the truth. I resolve to abstain from partaking in the production and trading of firearms and chemical poisons. as I'll explain in a second, that some version of those 5 basic precepts is usually the kind of core of the different precept trainings that people go through. And I do think thinking about precepts as trainings is important, and I'll say a little bit about that in a second. But these core 5 basic precepts in some version or another are common to different precept training levels. As a Dharma teacher in our society, after going through seminary and training with the teachers, we take additional precepts. We take what's called the 10 Bodhisattva precepts, Brahmasnet Sutra, the 10 Grave Rules. And so these add another 5 precepts building off of those core 5. And so I'm just going to go over those. There's going to be a slightly different wording here, and I'll say a little bit about that in a second. So the 5 additional precepts that we as Dharma teachers take in this society, and actually beyond, it's not just in our society, it's probably Mahayana Buddhism thing. So the 6th precept: do not speak of the misdeeds of others, but try to understand them with sympathy. By practicing and caring for this precept, you nourish your seed of friendship, supporting your going forth on the Bodhisattva path. Do not praise yourself nor condemn others. By practicing and caring for this precept, you nourish your seed of respect, supporting your going forth on the Bodhisattva path. Do not withhold your aid, material or spiritual, but give freely of yours wherever there is need. By practicing and caring for this precept, you nourish your seed of wealth and generosity, supporting your going forth on the Bodhisattva path. Do not get angry, but be forgiving. By practicing and caring for this precept, you nourish your seed of happiness, supporting your going forth on the Bodhisattva path. Do not revile the Triratna, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, but uphold them. By caring and nourishing this precept, you nourish your seed of faith, supporting your going forth on the Bodhisattva path. So just as a quick commentary on those precepts, the additional precepts, one, it shares the core with all of the precept takers, and in our tradition and beyond, the 5 core precepts are shared across many communities of practitioners as training programs. But there's one version of the Bodhisattva precepts in our Moon Journeying Through Clouds, where just using the last one, do not revile the Triratna, but uphold them. If you violate this precept, you destroy your seed of faith. Therefore, you will not be able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. And so that flavor of the precept and the way of describing the precept is you have this seed and you have to care for it, right? It's already there, present. And when you don't uphold the precept, then you destroy the seed. There's a kind of destructive element. So it also encourages a sense of, you really have to care for this, because one false move and it can be gone. And that has this, sometimes this kind of very dramatic, I would say, kind of really rough spirit of Zen, like hold it, you have it already, it's very precious, don't put it out. Like one drop of water on a small candle flame can put out the candle light. So don't even drop even a single drop of water on that candle flame. You really have to care for that light. In this version of the precepts, it's about nourishing seeds and going forth. For me, it has, sometimes this, I feel like this resonates more with my position where I'm growing into this bodhisattva practice and I'm trying to understand what does this mean to have taken these precepts. And so here it's practicing and caring for that precept, nourishing the seed of faith, nourishing the seed of generosity, nourishing the seed of virtue as we move into and develop and grow into this bodhisattva path. Ultimately, these aren't really two different positions, but they're just different flavors of how to describe them. I once heard Hajru Sunam recite the bodhisattva precepts in this way. And it was just kind of, there was really no announcement. It was just in a meeting, and she recited the 10 bodhisattva precepts, and it had that flavor to it. And it was, oh, okay, that's a different way of working with this. What does that mean? So already, some of these precepts have different flavors, different approaches, different ways of working with them that our teachers can lead us into and bring us into. But for those of you that are going on to take the 8 lay precepts, you're kind of feeling out your place in Buddhism and, do I want to take this on as a training? On top of the 5 that I already went through before, there's 3 additional ones. So I'll finish with those here because you'll see that now there starts to be there's a lot of different communities of precepts. So for those that are beginning the precept process, there's 3 additional to the 5, starting with, I resolve to abstain from wasting, but to conserve energy and natural resources. I resolve to abstain from harboring enmity against the wrongs of others, but to promote peace and justice through nonviolent means. I resolve to abstain from clinging to things that belong to me, but to practice generosity and the joy of sharing. So thinking about precepts in community, one reason I wanted to go through all of those different versions, I'm going to give you just three more in a second here, is one, it's the precept state of mind. To have a precept state of mind, precept keeping state of mind, one has to really embody and internalize the precepts so that they're there at your fingertips. So reciting them over and over again and just keeping them at the forefront of your mind will definitely help keep that precept keeping state of mind. So that's one reason to go through these. But another is just to start to understand that the precepts have a kind of living community relationship to them, and that they define different kinds of communities. That's one thing that they do. So for instance, in some traditions that have a strong lay and monastic divide, Theravada tradition, for one, depending upon how Mahayana traditions are and where they're embodied, there's a strong monastic and lay divide. The monastics and the lay practitioners share the initial 5 precepts, but they have different versions of them. So if you're a monastic, the 3rd precept becomes celibacy. If you're a lay person, you take the 3rd precept, it's not celibacy. So they're different training vehicles, right? So precepts are training that kind of bring people together with different kinds of, different communities of training and practitioners. The other thing to keep in mind is when you take precepts from a preceptor. That's definitely has been part of the tradition for quite a long time. I don't want to say it goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha, because it's not something I know, but I know that it's been there for quite a bit of time, that when you take precepts, you have a preceptor. Sunam has talked about this in various documents describing our training programs here. I know from the bhikkhunis that I work with in the Theravada tradition, they have preceptors. And so you enter into a relationship with the person who's giving you precepts. So for those of you that are starting the precept communities, and I remember this myself, actually, yeah, it's, as a Ku family, I remember being in precept meetings with Kujo and Kuman and Kusun and more. I'm just names aren't coming to me, but at the moment. But you have meetings together and you talk and you reflect on the precepts and you start to develop your understanding. I believe this time Mosamsam and Pami will lead the meeting, so they become part of your community, helping guiding you into the precepts. So the precepts aren't just like you developing the state of mind alone. It's you in a relationship with other people, your eventual preceptor who gives you the precepts. In some traditions, your preceptor is also the person you go to confess, like to talk about how you've been doing with your precepts, right? So there's a kind of living dynamic that comes with the precepts. In my case, I took precepts with Sammo Sunam, I think back in 2008 in Toronto. And then I ordained as a Dharma teacher in 2014 and took the Bodhisattva precepts with Haju Sunam leading that ceremony. So it's always important to remember that. Sometimes I'll tell you a quick story about, so in terms of these 3 additional precepts and community, I had the great fortune to meet a bhikkhuni when I was in Ann Arbor. She's friends of, she's now moved on to other dharmic practices and dharmic training vehicles, Amma Thanasanti. But at the time she was bhikkhuni, and I met her in Ann Arbor originally, but when I moved to Colorado, she also happened to be moving to Colorado. So I got to know her here and the communities around her. And she introduced me to just a really amazing person, bhikkhuni, who has since passed away, Achi Satima, a Sri Lankan bhikkhuni who lived up in the mountains just to the west of Denver with her family. And so at one point in time, Thanasanti invited me to the ceremony. I can't remember, I think it was the Vesak ceremony in this particular case. And Thanasanti was going to be there. I think another bhikkhuni Dhammadira was there, and Achi Satima was going to be leading the service. And it was really like a big event for the Sri Lankan community. A lot of Sri Lankan families came together, but it wasn't just Sri Lankan families. It was really like a mixed ethnic background, diverse background of people who had gotten to know these bhikkhunis in different ways and descended on this house that had become a makeshift temple for the day. And I remember showing up early, not really knowing, this is my first time, I had no idea what I was doing. And just like, I'm just gonna explore this. And Achi Satima asked if I wanted to take the Uposatha precepts. And I was like, sounds good to me, right? So I just actually remember this story before I started the talk, so I wanted to bring it into it. So the Uposatha day, or well, it wasn't Uposatha in this case, it was Wesak, but to take the additional precepts of observance on this day, which include the first 5, which we mentioned, the core ones for 5 before. But the third one becomes being celibate for the day of the observance. So that would be for the whole day. The 5th one becomes do not take of any kind of intoxicants. So it's really kind of abstinence from liquors and all sorts of intoxicants. But then there's 3 additional ones, and they read as follows. I undertake to observe the rule of abstinence from taking food at the wrong time. I undertake to observe the rule of abstinence from dancing, music, visiting shows, flowers, makeup, the wearing of ornaments and decorations. I undertake to observe the rule of abstinence from a tall, high sleeping place. So in this particular case, on this day, first off, in this new situation, I'm just really not knowing what I'm getting myself into. And then, because this wonderful, lovely bhikkhuni is telling me, hey, Kusa, do you want to take these precepts? I'm like, okay, that's great. The community is doing it. I'll join in. But I didn't really know what I was taking. Probably should have prepped a little more. So then when I read that, I was like, okay, now what do I do for the rest of the day? So the not taking food at the wrong time becomes not eating afternoon. So you usually eat 1 meal, and then you fast for the rest of the day, minus like some liquids and maybe like a small snack later in the evening. So the first one becomes not eating after a certain time. But this was a community gathering, so not everybody took these extra precepts. So for the smaller group of people who did, they were kind of became set aside, had to eat slightly before, and then go into usually do some form of practicing while everybody else is eating. Kind of keep yourself mindful of what had happened. And then for the other precepts, I had driven there from Colorado Springs, and I love listening to music. I got all these tunes to get me through the long drive up there. But now I've taken this precept where I'm not supposed to be listening to music, dancing, and engaging in those kinds of entertainments. It's not my tradition. Those are precepts you see more in Theravada communities, but not so much in Mahayana communities. But I had taken them for the day. So now I had a choice. And that just reminds me a little bit of this precept state of mind that I now had to re-envision my life for that day, right? In light of these precepts. And I could have just been like, I took them, but I didn't know. Let's just say it was an interesting day of exploring that relationship with precepts. And it created a sense of community, a relationship with Achi Satyama that day. And in other times when I've gone, which I did not take those extra precepts on other days, and sometimes I did, just a choice, right? And a question of training and what you want to do in that moment. So this is all to say that precepts live in community, they're given in community, they're practiced in community. The wording and the way you understand them develop in your relationship with your teacher and with the people around you, what you're willing to take on, what you're willing to train with. So they're very much alive, and you have to make them come alive in that sense. Okay, so that's the community part. The second part of this talk, just for a little bit longer, is talking about this precept state of mind. And so I'll tell you a little story. This is kind of funny for me, but I told it to Taju, and she's like, "Oh, you gotta tell that story." Okay, so we live in, I live in Colorado, and there's a snowstorm that was supposed to be coming. It actually did come, but in the days leading up to any snowstorm in Colorado, for any of you that have lived in Colorado, basically you get these warnings that, major snowstorm, anywhere from 3 inches to 30 feet, you're either going to be able to drive to your local store, or you're going to be so buried in, you'll be lucky if you have food 3 weeks from now. It becomes this comical kind of snowstorm apocalypse news stories. So anyways, I went to the grocery store on Thursday, King Soopers, which is our local version of your Kroger out in the Midwest area or in the Ann Arbor area. And for some reason, the Soopers on this day, I don't know what happened. I had heard that maybe some people had gone off with some of the shopping carts, but there was like a fierce competition for shopping carts on Thursday. There was a line, people were hunting for them in the parking lot. I became part of that crowd. I was like, I want a shopping cart. So I was like walking around, but there were none to be found. So I walk in, I thought, debating how much can I carry on my own. I grabbed like a small little hand cart, but in the end I found one of those newer kind of mid-sized shopping carts, it's like the new style, not so big, but not a hand cart. So I go through my shopping experience. I had somehow lucked upon this smaller shopping cart, filled it up, went to the checkout, the self-checkout, which for me is already a nerve-wracking experience, the self-checkout, because it always like gets hung up in some way, and then I have to wait for them to come. And so I'm having a frustrating kind of experience already, interesting experience. And I'm checking out, and the last item goes through. Literally, I pull it out of the cart, and as I pull it out of the cart and I ring it, somebody comes up to me, says, "Hey, do you need that cart?" And my first response was, "Yeah, I needed to get out to my car." And the first second, right as I said that, the first thing that came to mind was, "What the hell are you saying? You don't need that cart. You just carry the stuff on your own. It's not your cart to begin with. It wasn't that I owned the cart." So already, I can hear, the second I said, I could just hear my mind turn and go like, break. What did you just say to this person? So of course, I had to save face. I turned around and I said, "Well, do you need the cart?" I mean, obviously the guy needed the cart. He asked me for the cart. So, "Do you need the cart?" And he said, "Yeah, well, I got some heavy thing here. It would really help." I was like, "Okay, just take it. Take it." probably not, I don't want to say the best way to resolve the situation, but in the end, I gave him the cart. I walked out. I was able to carry all of my shopping bags out. But for me, the kind of instructive moment here is that initial response. Do you need the cart? Yeah, I need the cart. Oh, I don't actually need the cart. There's no way I needed that cart. And in fact, one of my precepts is asking me to give of my material and spiritual aid wherever there is need, to not be stingy about it. This was a kind of aid that I could have given. I had a cart. There was no reason I should have held on to it. But that initial resistance to it, and then the saving face afterwards. So there, you know, for me, that's working with precepts. That's a precept state of mind. And maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe ideal would be there would just be no stop. I just like somebody comes and asks, like, okay, here's the cart. But that's not where I'm at. Where I'm at is I need the cart. And but also, no, I don't need the cart. And then navigating that territory. So sometimes we talked about precepts of body, speech, and mind. And so working with your actions intimately through your precepts, are you actually doing the things the precepts are asking you to do, or not doing the things they're asking you not to do? Speech, what are you saying? And for speech, I include like thoughts too. It's kind of the formulated. Are you speaking in a way that's in line with your precepts? Or are you not speaking in a way that's in line with your precepts? And then mind, precepts of mind, for me, it's like, what state of mind was I in that second before the guy asked me if I needed the cart? Because whatever state of mind that was in that moment, it was holding on to something. It was attached to the cart, whether or not I knew it. But it became clear to me I was attached to the cart, because when he asked me, my first response was, yeah, I need it. So the precept state of mind here is then waking up to my attachments, waking up to my mind that prevents me from entering into that kind of just anonymous, intimate, spontaneous relationship with other people where you're just like, here's the cart kind of thing. I want to read this passage comes to mind. I think some of the teachings in our tradition really encourage us to take precepts to a great level, to really push us beyond our comfort zones in a way. And this is, I would say, like just a taste of that. But this is from the great master Sosan Hyujang in the Mirror of Zen, just as a way of hearing him talk about working with precepts, in this case also with the paramitas. So Hyujang says, if a poor man comes begging from you, give him what he needs according to your means. Have great love and great compassion, considering him as if he were part of your own body. This is true charity, dana, true sharing, true giving. And then Hyujang adds a small commentary. I and you, self and other, these are not two, but one body. We all came into the world empty-handed, and we will leave empty-handed. That is our life. So just as one last thing, you know, and again, it's like a precept state of mind. And this is very much alive for me right now because we did get snow overnight. So I'm going to have to go out there and start sweeping snow when we're done here. So there's going to be a question about it. But when I sweep the snow in front of our sidewalk, there's always this question of where to stop. Do I stop at the end of my sidewalk? Or do I go to the next one? Or do I go to the one after that? And I will say there are days where I sweep it and I clean my sidewalk here and I make a very clear distinction between my sidewalk and others. And I think, oh, I'm going to stop now. And then there are other days where maybe I push on and sweep other people's sidewalks. I'm not saying like one is the right way or the other, but I think for me, the precept state of mind is, why do I make those decisions? Why do I stop on some days? Some days I have to get to work, you know, I don't have time. like, and I have to care for myself, or I have to care for my dog or something. Sometimes it's just because like, I don't want to do it. And I make a distinction like, well, this is my sidewalk, they can clean theirs. And each time is going to be different. So I don't know how it's going to be today when I go out there, but I do hope that I can keep a precept state of mind where I can think, how can I really push myself in my precepts and really be generous to the community and the people around me, to really not create harm or suffering, to clean the sidewalks so that when people walk over them, they don't worry about tripping or slipping on the ice. And then really ask myself, how much do I need? How much can I do and give in this sense? And then at some point, I have to come back in. It's just how it is, and just be alive to those decisions in that moment from a precept state of mind. So I'm going to finish just with that last quote, the first quote I read, because I think it's just kind of sets the context for us as you and all of us are considering how to work with precepts. Are we going to take this kind of, are we going to take the precepts? Are we going to renew them? Are we going to remember them in this day? Maybe that's for later, but what does this mean? This quote is really powerful. So just coming back to it one last time. There's only one important point you must keep in your mind and let it be your guide. No matter what people call you, you are just who you are, keeping to this truth. You must ask yourself, how is it you want to live your life? We live and we die. This is the truth that we can only face alone. No one can help us, not even the Buddha. So consider carefully, what prevents you from living the way you want to live your life? Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully some of this inspires you. And if not, it was just wonderful to have this space together. And I'll pass it back to Ma'um over there in Ann Arbor.
Thank you so much, Kusa. Very inspiring and informative Dharma talk. And now I would like to invite you, as part of our announcements, I would like to invite you to participate in our upcoming precepts classes. There will be informational sessions on March 28th and April 4th at noon Eastern time. So if you're interested in exploring precepts in more depth and also in culminating informally becoming a Buddhist, please join us for these informational sessions. So again, noon Eastern on March 28th and April 4th. Would also like to invite you to sign up for one of our upcoming meditation classes offered by Zoom on Thursday evenings. Our next round of classes begins this Thursday, March 18th, from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. For any of these events that I'm speaking of, you can go to contact us by email, which is AnnArborZenTemple@gmail.com, AnnArborZenTemple@gmail.com, or give us a call. April 1st through the 4th is our spring retreat, Spring Yomu Junction. This is an opportunity to deepen your practice by spending some committed time together as a community. So either all of that time, all those days, or you can drop in for Dharma talks from Haju Sunam. And the Dharma talks will be given twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. So we will give more details on that in the next few weeks. Hope that you can join us. Parinirvana Day is March 28th. On that day, we will celebrate the Buddha's passing and have a special Dharma talk about the Buddha's last journey. And Hayun asks that you send pictures of your altar. She's preparing a special edition of the e-bulletin that will feature home altars for everyone. So send those along if you have them. We have already received some from members and really appreciate them. And finally, thank you so much for your continued support, both financial and through your presence and through your communications via email, bringing us gifts to leave at the temple, various ways that you connect and continue to engage. So it's so much appreciated. Thank you. And now please join me in the 4 great vows. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.